Yeah, yeah.
Unbelievable.
What about Dershowitz's letter? Dershowitz's
Yeah,
letter saying,
folks, you've joined us in mid-conversation as Lev, myself, and Zev are keeping ourselves from vomiting in our mouth and just becoming infuriated because the big scandal, well, the ongoing scandal is the Epstein scandal. Now, I have called it, and I believe Lev and Zev will agree with me, a cover-up. And I think words matter. This is officially a cover-up. The Trump administration has been engaged in a cover-up since the early summer when it was reported in the Wall Street Journal that his attorney general, Pam Bondi, told him he was all up in the Epstein files. When he was asked about it publicly, he lied. And then we got the Wall Street Journal last month, that flaming leftist, liberal, socialist rag, the Wall Street Journal, stood by its reporting and said that Ghislaine Maxwell, who was a child predator, the accomplice of Jeffrey Epstein, a woman who, along with Epstein, according to victims and survivors, the Farmer sisters and Virginia Giuffre, raped these girls who got moved to a minimum security camp. No one knows why. During the Trump administration, she compiled a book. She compiled a book with illustration and notes and photos from his close friends for Jeffrey Epstein's 50th birthday. Well, the Wall Street Journal reported that Donald Trump sent a lewd message. Donald Trump threatened to sue Wall Street Journal. Wall Street Journal said, no, we stand by reporting. Well, Donald Trump followed through with this massive lawsuit. Then the Wall Street Journal published another article listing the names of other powerful and influential people who gave notes and letters. And then they're the ones who came out and said that Pam Bondi had told them. Well, then, folks, Todd Blanche, who's the acting attorney general, she never leaves D.C., but Todd Blanche, the acting attorney general, who was also Donald Trump's personal attorney, goes and meets Ghislaine Maxwell in Florida for 2 days. And you should be asking yourself, well, what about the prosecutor? Shouldn't the prosecutor go and meet her? Oh, the prosecutor, Maureen Comey, was fired. But what we know is after that 2-day quid pro quo, less than a week later, Ghislaine Maxwell, and to this day, the Trump administration has not explained why. Why or who signed off on Ghislaine Maxwell as a child molester, as a predator, got transferred to a minimum security camp in Texas where she's now eligible for work release if she chooses to pursue it. And what we have seen is a quid pro quo between Ghislaine Maxwell and Donald Trump. And furthermore, folks, after she was moved, lo and behold, there were no drops, no Wall Street Journal articles, right? Folks, Michael Wolff, who I talked to previously, I asked him, well, how would Wall Street Journal get this book compiled by Ghislaine Maxwell? And he said, the only person who had access to that would be Ghislaine Maxwell's estate. And once she got her quid pro quo, notice there were no more leaks or drops from the Wall Street Journal. As we were discussing this, Lev has said, I'm just catching everyone up to speed, folks, and then I'm going to unleash Lev and Zev on this. Lev has always said, watch this space. And the space that his sources within MAGA and the Trump administration have said is the Dan Bongino space, because Dan Bongino, who's the deputy FBI director, ran on cleaning the deep state. His base sees him as a cultural warrior. Well, guess what, folks? Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, they haven't released the Epstein files. They've become the deep state, and they've gone really quiet. And specifically, Dan Bongino has gone super quiet in the past month, to the point where Missouri's attorney general was brought in to be deputy FBI director. Where's Dan Bongino? It's like, where's Waldo? And then finally, yesterday, a bombshell that the U.S. Democrats have made public, the 238-page scrapbook given to Epstein as a birthday present on his 50th birthday, compiled by Ghislaine Maxwell. And folks, lo and behold, matching up to Wall Street Journal's reporting, straight up to the signature of Donald Trump, straight up to the lewd drawing, which is in line with his illustrations, straight up to the text, word for word, it is this filthy, lewd message that Donald Trump wrote to Jeffrey Epstein. A pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday. I can't read it. What's it? And may every day be another wonderful secret. But in addition to this, the Guardian has published all of it. Folks, it's the stuff that's in here is filthy. These drawings, Zev and Lev, are so gross. There's this one drawing and Zev and I were talking about hand-drawn picture of Jeffrey Epstein literally giving a lollipop and balloons to girls in 1983. And then next to him, it's 2003 where Jeffrey Epstein has a plane. He's on a beach and four naked girls are massaging him. There's another one where there's handwritten notes by him. There's another one, Dear Jeffrey, happy 50th. There's a plane, balloons, a cake, and like near naked women. And then there's another one, Epstein standing among palm trees holding an oversized check for $22,500 with a Trump signature on it. And it doesn't resemble Trump's signature at the years past. It's partially redacted writing. Below the image says Epstein showed early talents with money and women and had sold a quote, fully depreciated blank to Donald Trump.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really disturbing picture, Waj. I mean, that picture actually seems to indicate that they were selling a girl. I mean, there's a name that it's redacted, but it seems that he was selling a woman for $22,000. That's the indication that you get from looking at that particular thing. And if he's selling it to Donald Trump, or vice versa, and this is a transaction of human trafficking, and this is that kind of a activity which we've often suspected, that Donald Trump had at least accessed that part of the world of Jeffrey Epstein. But if we're now talking about actual money changing hands for a woman, and which is basically what they've said there, because the name is redacted, it's very disturbing.
And the amount. There's an actual amount there that
$22,500.
$22,500. And also, I mean, Trump said it himself. He talked about, may she rest in peace, Gouffre, about as she was some kind of object, as he stole her.
Yeah. He when asked about it last month, he said, what was the falling out between you and Epstein? He said, he stole property from me. And the property he was referring to was teenager Virginia Giuffre, who worked at Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah. Exactly. So now you have even more confirmation with this picture. And again, that's why I tell everybody, I mean, we don't, everybody wants a smoking gun with Donald Trump. I don't want to see a video, God forbid, of Donald Trump in some kind of situation like that, because this is sick enough already what we're seeing. But we could see 1 + 1 = 2. We're not stupid. I mean, there's enough. This right now, if for those of you that didn't want to listen to the victims, to the survivors, that should have been enough right there. Having so many women, it's not one, two, so many women come out, they have the same story from different walks of life, different parts of the world, they've never met each other, never spoken. Even this press conference on Capitol Hill, you had 10 women that never spoken to each other and have the same exact stories and talking about how Maxwell, and that's what I want to just touch on, Waj, before we get further, because what I think is extremely important that nobody's talking about is Maxwell lied, and we knew she was going to lie. But now we have confirmation that when she was, because part of her deposition is, how it all starts out. If you lie, it's an extra 5 years. So why isn't her ass being dragged out of that cushy little prison right now? Because she obviously had the book. She's the one that made the book. The book has come out. She's on tape literally a week ago talking about how, no, I don't know anything about any book. There's no Donald Trump in there. I don't remember anybody seeing anything. There's nothing happening going on. And now she's in a cushy, a little federal prison going on.
She had immunity there, right? For that interview that she did with Blanche a few weeks ago, which means she could have lied with impunity, and she did, because it's now obvious from this particular book, when you look at the first pages of the book, it's written by Ghislaine, it's put together by Ghislaine, it says so. In the first prologue, it says, I have put this together for you. And yet she denies that she ever contacted Donald Trump to get any of these illustrations or anything for this book. Well, who did it if she didn't do it? When in the book, she basically says that she was the one who put this book together. It's part of this giant cover-up. And I'm glad you both are calling it a cover-up, because it is a cover-up. When you have the President of the United States sending out his press secretary to go out in front of the nation and declare that that is not Donald Trump's signature, when it is Donald Trump's signature, and everyone can tell it's Donald Trump's signature, and that the whole thing is a fraud, is a hoax, when we have, clearly a very disturbing message hinting at all sorts of human trafficking, and underage women from Donald Trump. And then this secondary thing, which I'm just going to, it's worth reading this check that there's a photograph of this check with Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein's name on it. And it's just worthwhile reading this note again. Jeffrey, showing early talents with money and women, sells fully depreciated, name redacted, to Donald Trump for $22,500. Showed early people skills in quotation marks too. Even though I handled the deal, I didn't get any of the money or I think it says the girl at the end here.
Or the girl. It says the
the
girl.
girl.
I didn't get
So,
any of the money or the girl.
so the person who's doing this transaction is doing it between Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein, $22,500 for this person whose name has been redacted, who's showing people skills, whatever that might mean in their world. And even though he handled the deal, he didn't get the money or the girl, he says. I mean, this is a check, a giant prize check that you get when you win a golf tournament that they're holding up with $22,500. And it's, from Jeffrey Epstein, paying to Jeffrey Epstein from DJ Trump. Now, that is a different signature, as you point out, but still, it is likely Donald J. Trump who's handing over that money.
And there is a woman whose face is redacted. There's four people, Epstein and two other guys. And then there's a blonde woman whose face is redacted and the name is also redacted. And folks, listen, Donald Trump partied with Epstein in the late 80s and 90s. They used to chase models together. Michael Wolff, when I asked him how old were these models, he said ages 14 to 20. Both of the men had modeling agencies. Donald Trump took over Miss Teen USA and Miss USA. There are allegations that he went to the dressing room of Miss Teen USA, teenage girls, who said he was a creep. He just returned to the scene of the crime, U.S. Open, where two different women at two different years said that he sexually assaulted them. This is a man who bragged about grabbing women by the pee. This is a man who fantasized and sexualized about Ivanka, his daughter, publicly, right? And this is a man who said, Epstein, 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 we're going to get the Epstein files. And now he's calling it a hoax. After those women that Lev talked about, these brave women, survivors who came out on September 3rd, he openly said, now it's a hoax, and said it's a Democratic hoax. And also another important news item that I don't want to get lost is on Friday night, super Christian, very religious Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, came out and said, oh, Donald Trump was an FBI informant. And then on Monday, he walked it back. Zev, just break that down for us. Let's take him at his word. Let's take him at his word that Donald Trump was an FBI informant. Just use the logic.
He was an FBI informant for a lot of things. In fact, we know that he was an FBI informant because that's how he got into got off a lot of trouble. Where there was the Russian mob handing off millions of dollars to him at the Taj Mahal. He got away with that because he was an FBI informant. He also informed on these mafia dons that were building his buildings, the concrete guys, because we know he told them they got into trouble, they got into jail. He never did get into jail. So sure, he might have been informing on these people, but he was participating in each of these crimes nevertheless. And whether it was the Taj Mahal and the money laundering through the casinos there, or whether it was the building of the Trump Towers with all these union payoffs and all these other contracts that he had in order to get the contract at a specific price, or whether it's the human trafficking, he was involved in these crimes nevertheless. So you might say that he was an FBI informant for some of this, and maybe he was on Epstein as well as he was for the others. But that doesn't get him, that doesn't necessarily give him complete immunity over what happened in the past. So he took part in these crimes. This is the president of the United States, took part in crimes with underage girls. There's surely a lot of evidence as well around that we haven't seen. But of course, the one Katie Johnson deposition is pretty telling about what really happened. And I've posted that deposition before. It's pretty chilling when you hear her in her own words describe these parties that the president of the United States was at when she was underage, and he's busy choosing her to have sex with him because she looks like his daughter. At a young age. This is the kind of thing the president of the United States was engaged in those years ago. So, that's an excuse. It may also be factual that he was an FBI informant, but it certainly doesn't take away from his participation in those crimes. And the fact that he's now calling everything a hoax is an indication that he's still covering up. The Department of Justice has the files. They should be releasing the full, unredacted files, because everyone involved in hiding those files right now is involved in obstruction of justice. They're hiding the important information that the public deserves to know about the president of the United States. This is a cover-up, and it's happening in real time right now.
Lev.
No, I mean, absolutely. I mean, there's so much
Lev, I see Zev.
was writing.
Okay, are you back?
Oh,
All right, there you go.
yeah,
Go ahead.
sorry. Yeah, I mean, even take a look at some of the other letters. Like you got Alan Dershowitz writing around, "Hey, I spoke to Vogue. I took care of it instead of you. Clinton's going to be on the front cover of it and stuff like that." I mean, there was just so many powerful and so many individuals involved in that world and that were a part of these operate. And the one biggest tall tale with Donald Trump, and I always said about Katie Johnson, and I did this. I also had Katie's whole interview on on my show, is that he never went after her. Till this day, he's never went after her. He's never even mentions it. He treats Katie Johnson, for me, it's very similar, because he treats me in the same way because he pretends like we don't exist, and that's how I know she's beyond. For those of you that even have even some kind of doubts or some say it, if believe me when I tell you, if Katie Johnson was telling some sort of a lie, and she was saying something, Donald Trump would have been all over it, especially right now, making an example out of her and trying to use that as a victory. But the fact that he ignores these victims, the fact he doesn't want to meet him. Even today, Carolyn Levitt standing there on the podium was asked. Everybody's asking. You got, literally Marjorie Taylor Greene begging for you to hear these. Why not hear the witnesses? Why not hear the survivors? Why not have these young women come to the Oval and sit there, because he can't look them in the eye, guys. Because
Yeah.
he literally can't even look him in the eye because he knows, just like Zev said, that in the 80s, in the 90s, in the 70s, it was a different Donald Trump, folks. It's not the same Donald Trump, 83-year-old man you're watching there on TV play some sort of a game. Well, Donald Trump ran with a different type of crowd of people. It was a different type. This was pre-Me Too movement. This is when women didn't even have the same rights. This is when women were scared. Modeling agencies, and the one thing that I'm looking into the work that is going to be also very big, because you're talking about thousands of victims. You know how many Eastern European girls were smuggled in here and trafficked into Donald Trump and to what's it called, Epstein and all of those guys during those same parties, those same that you don't even hear about because they shouldn't have even been here. They came here and then they disappeared. They were sent back to Eastern European, Russia, Ukraine, Slovakia, all those different countries out there. So it's a lot bigger, and this is the disgusting part. And like Zev said, 100% is the DOJ has it. They all saw it. They know it for the cover up. That's one thing, and that's why Dan Bongino. You see, that's why, because he saw this stuff. I mean, it shows that he has some sort of either hard gut or so, whatever you want to call it. Because after to be able to see, and this is for a Pam Bondi or for a Cash Patel or for any of these enablers that are covering up after watching this, knowing this, seeing this, knowing that this is what's it called, to be able to sit there and stare people in the eye, lie, and cover up to the American people is the biggest injustice that we have, and that's why we're never going to shut up. We're never going to allow them to cover this up. This is not going to work, and everything they do is going to backfire like it's happening right now.
I want to connect some dots and go back to you, Zev. I want to remind people that in 2002, Donald Trump, who claims that he didn't know Epstein and it's all a hoax, or he's an FBI informant, which then Mike Johnson walks back, he openly said, you've heard the audio, he called Jeffrey Epstein a terrific guy. His words, he likes beautiful women, many of them on the younger side. So they knew. Or if you look at this book, and if you have the stomach for it, if you look at these photos and images in the book, these are people, some of the most powerful, influential people, essentially praising a pedophile. It's like an open secret, right? Just look at these videos. Look at these, these photos, these drawings that they drew. Donald Trump, according to Michael Wolff, partied with Epstein in the 90s. And he said in the 90s, as Lev was saying, the biggest thing, especially in New York, the way you showed yourself as a powerful young man was to go after models, acquiring models, chasing models. That was the thing. And the ages of the models that Michael Wolff said were 14 to 20. That means they were going after girls. If they were having sex with these women, they were raping girls. That's predatory behavior. That's actually molesting girls, not women, girls, right? And then each and every single time that Donald Trump has been asked to show some compassion, to show some mercy toward the women, he cannot. He cannot show any mercy or compassion to the women. We've been tracking this for a while. After he was asked back to back, he was with Keir Starmer in the UK. And then the next day he was asked about, his relationship with Epstein. He did not show any compassion to the women. He treated Virginia Giuffre as property. He called her, he stole property from me.
Mhm.
And then speaking about this book that was released and that Zev and are looking at, I mean, this is even bigger than the new drawing. This friggin' fake check, this big ass fake check in which Jeffrey Epstein's showing the early talents with money and women. He sells a fully depreciated blank to Donald Trump for $22,500. What does that mean? Who is he selling? What is he selling? Or who is he selling Donald Trump to? So the fact that he's unable to even empathize with the girls. And then again, when these women, these survivors came out on September 3rd, when he was asked about it, no empathy, said that it's all a hoax. So Zeb, if
Mhm.
I'm a reporter with a microphone in front of not just Donald Trump, but Republicans, I'd ask him the simple question. Do you agree with Donald Trump that the Epstein scandal is a hoax? And do you think that these survivors are lying? I've yet to see anyone ask that question, Zeb.
Well, it's a natural question to ask, Waj, and everyone should be asking that question of everybody because, look, this is not some accident. As Lev mentioned, there's, these guys were after models. Guess what? They also all owned modeling agencies. That Donald Trump had a modeling agency that was specializing in Eastern European girls coming over. Jeffrey Epstein had a modeling agency. Jean-Luc Brunel, another involved person with Jeffrey Epstein, had a modeling agency. Their jobs were to bring Eastern European women into America to find all these teenage girls and promising them lavish careers and future careers as famous models. But what they were used for instead was for sex and to be traded around from rich billionaire to other rich billionaire for blackmail or for money or for favors or whatever it was that they were needing at the time. This was the currency of the time for these men. And this is the man who is president of the United States today. It's really hard to say that this was anything other than real life. You can't fake those modeling agencies. You can't fake these victims. These are real people telling you their real stories who stood in front of the Capitol steps, revealing the trauma that they went through. It's impossible to ignore that. You can't say they're lying. They're obviously telling the truth. You can send as many F-35 jets above them to drown them out. You're still not going to convince anyone that they're not telling the truth because they're telling the truth. And the modeling agencies prove it, and the affidavits prove it, and these photographs with checks, with a check amount of $222,000 proves it.
Yeah, I mean, this is just another part of, listen, what we saw during the Me Too movement, Harvey Weinstein. We saw what happened with the casting couch, Hollywood. It was exposed. We saw what happened with P. Diddy, with the music industry and what else. This is the same thing. There was powerful men. It was an era. During those times, women didn't have the same rights. It was a time where women were scared to report if they got attacked or hurt. They were scared because they didn't have the same rights. And these powerful men used modeling agencies, especially in the 90s when the fall of the Soviet Union, and they were able to bring in all of these Eastern European girls into here. Because I'm just saying that's something I'm concentrating, talking about, because nobody's even mentioned how many hundreds and hundreds and maybe even thousands of girls that went through this, and not just all of these same powerful men, because they were used, and abused and sold between each other like property. And by the way, my sources, I don't know if you guys know, but I wrote it in my Substack about a couple of days ago. The guy that wrote the letter, his name is Joel Pashkow. He's a member at Mar-a-Lago. He's the guy that wrote the letter to that letter beneath, and he's in the picture.
Oh, the illustration, that disgusting illustration.
Yeah. His name is Joel Pascal, and he's a member at Mar-a-Lago.
Interesting. This is the illustration with the 1983 and the 2003.
No, that's another one.
With the check,
Okay.
with the check, with the 22.
So the check is actually a member at Mar-a-Lago.
He's a member at Mar-a-Lago.
So more evidence that, in fact, it did really happen, and it happened at Mar-a-Lago is what their suggestion there is.
Peter Mandelson, the UK ambassador to the US, has an image of both him and Epstein together with a message, but wherever he is in the world, he remains my best pal. Bill Clinton sent a message. Folks, this implicates several powerful people. And what I got from this book is that all of them knew. They had to have known that this guy is chasing all these girls. And Ghislaine Maxwell just so proudly put it in a book, along with a topless photo of herself. And then there's also these strange photos, folks. I'm not making this up, of animals copulating. So you'd have all these notes, these letters, and then you have a photo from the birthday book showing lions having sex. Then you have another random photo showing zebras having sex. Then you have redacted photos of women in bikinis. All these young girls in bikinis, different photos of them like Polaroids all on one page. I mean, this is so disgusting. You have an excerpt showing what appears to be a scan of a nipple, specially commissioned by Henry Rozovsky in honor of Jeffrey Epstein's 50th birthday. Uh, and this woman, and again, I think if you just focus on Ghislaine Maxwell, this is damning for Ghislaine Maxwell. You're a pervert and a deviant for compiling this for Jeffrey Epstein. You lied about it. You said, "Oh, what book?" Well, now this is the book. You're all over it. Why, oh, why did you get a cushy transfer to a minimum security camp during the Trump administration? That's like $1 million question, Lev.
And just go back a little 30 seconds, the discussing part, because I want to just touch up on what you said, Waj. Not only did all these men know, and this is, I want everybody to think for a second, not only did they know, this is why they hung out with him, because they wanted to be like him. They enjoyed that. They got something from Epstein being around, because when you were around Epstein, because trust me, if you go watching my documentary and you see my life where I grew up, I was a young kid around all these powerful men, and maybe not some of them named in this book individually, but it was the same type of era where they looked up to and tried to outdo each other. And that's why you see the sick, disgusting pictures of each one trying to, who could get a younger girl, who could get more than 2 or 3 girls, who could get. This was this is their mindset. That's why people like Donald Trump, Epstein. That's why the cover up is so big, because it's not that they just knew, because these people looked up to, wanted to participate, and wanted to be around it. Because anybody with even half a heart that would realize it would walk away, would not be around it. But for all of those people that you saw being around there for years, you know who you're with. And when you're giving a person like you said, when Maxwell putting together a book, and when that book is compiled of more, it's how more perverted can I be? How more, and every letter, everything has to do with, just think about it, all of it has to do, none of it is, hey, Jeffrey, great work on that humanitarian mission, congratulations on saving all those kids. Oh, great work on, building that building. No, every letter by some of all these powerful men have to do with how more deviant can I be? How much more implicit can I be? Because that's just how they thought, and that's how they were. And now maybe the time has passed, and they're all trying to cover up what was going on back in those days. The Bill Cosbys, all of them, folks. That was the era, and that's why you see, just because you only saw what's his name, Weinstein, or whatever his name is, Harvey Weinstein, that doesn't mean he was alone. That's just one person. But how many Harvey Weinsteins are out there? And a lot of them are in this Epstein scandal, folks.
Zev, go ahead.
So just found this really interesting letter in this 50th birthday book, which is from one of the girls, Levin. You'll find this really interesting. She writes, "I received a call from Ghislaine, who I had worked on, massaged in brackets, twice in the last few months to work on her quote unquote employer. He's a businessman who wants to work with his feet at his desk," she said. "My first thought was corns and bunions with the curmudgeon of a man, but when I first set eyes on you on March 22nd, 1993, you were sitting behind an enormous desk in your office at home. And my first thought, I'm rushing ahead a little bit here, that he looks more handsome than Ralph Lauren." And she goes on to describe their whole experience of her, I won't even read some of this because it'll make you, it's not necessarily appropriate, but it talks about them having submissive sexual encounters with each other, and that she felt ultimately is still saying in this letter that she loves him and it's his birthday and all of that. But this is, I'm not sure the age of this person, I'm not sure, but it's an indication of the actual network that they built, of how they found these girls, they brought them in as massages, they groomed them, they developed them. Some of them landed up becoming the people who are the predators later on. But this is the organization they built. This is not just one person craving teenage girls. This was a network, an organized criminal network, bringing in girls from across the world and grooming girls at underage, developing them into prostitutes, basically, that they could, then sell or use to blackmail other people.
What this 50th birthday book shows. Sorry, go ahead.
No, the key what he just said is because, and they used to blackmail other people and use them to do things and go out there and infiltrate and use it. And all of these other people, see, this is how it was in that type of world. You had, the Epsteins of the world were not just, that's why people can say, why were they so financially rich? Why would people give them this type? Why were they involved? Because they set up these rings, these, women, young girls rings, and gave these fantasies and ran in these rich, powerful club worlds where people like the Clintons, Schmintons, whatever, that had to be so uptight and everything could only dream of being around there or being it. And he gave him the cover of being this powerful thing and allowing them with this Epstein Island, with the, his parties, with his event, to be able to give him to that part of it. That's why you had all these powerful men give in, because this is exactly what they wanted. So I don't excuse any of them, because, they were all a part of it. Not that they just knew, they were all willing participants, because allowing it to happen and not speaking up when they could have.
And then I also want to say this book by itself proves that it's not a hoax. So this is true. This happened. So again, we normalize and give Donald Trump a pass for the ridiculous things that he says, but I don't think we should. Donald Trump now is on record saying it's all a hoax, a Democratic hoax. And I want someone to ask him, how can this be a hoax when we have all this evidence? How can this be a hoax when we have all these survivors? How can this be a hoax when Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted? How can it be a hoax, right? Nobody's asking these basic questions, which is why I think it's very important that we use the words that this is a cover-up. This is a cover-up. And Lev and Zeb, what we've said is that this seems to be one of two Achilles cankles for Donald Trump. The economy, which the numbers came out today, folks, it's even worse. It's even worse than Friday. And Friday was bad. All the gains that we made are now removed because of inflation. The trade war is disastrous. Tariffs are causing the prices to go up. Unemployment benefits have increased. Job numbers are even lower, right? The two Achilles heels that he has is Epstein and the economy. And I want to ask you, Lev and Zev, because you guys have been following this, the fact that Marjorie Taylor Greene joined Thomas Massie last week and Ro Khanna with these women shows to, and Lauren Boebert, shows to me that they realize that the base is not going to let this one go, Zeb. The MAGA base seems to be on it, and Marjorie, learning from what's happening to Dan Bongino and Kash Patel, seems to be playing both sides right now. Your take on this?
It's so interesting that Marjorie Taylor Greene did that, because it is an indication that she's actually, not the cartoon figure that we used to think she is, that she really might have a heart and a soul here, and she's on the right side of justice. Look, what they're doing to Thomas Massie, Lev and I spoke about this the other day, in his Kentucky riding, where there are these, massive billionaire GOP funders trying to primary him with massive campaigns against him in his Kentucky seat, is an indicator of how seriously the GOP machine, the machine that gave us Donald Trump, the big funders, the donors, the Adelsons of the world, those people are dead scared of what Epstein means. And they are doing everything in their power to target people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Massie, Boebert. And it's an indication that they, really do have an independent streak in them, that they're actually willing to stand up to this, because they know what's coming next. There will be huge campaigns against each of them in each of their ridings.
Lev, I think Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, who are terrible, by the way. I refuse to give them credit for anything, but on this issue, they're right. On this issue, they're right. I think they see where the wind is blowing, and I think what I've always said is QAnon got mainstreamed thanks to Donald Trump and the freaks. The freaks took over the GOP and the party. The freaks include people like Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and Marjorie Taylor Greene. They radicalized the base with QAnon. They radicalized the base with the deep state. They radicalized the base with the Epstein files. So Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert actually represent the base much more so than Mitch McConnell. And the fact that they're out there with Massie and Khanna to me shows that they know where the MAGA base is. And for me, I was talking to Ari Berman just an hour ago, and Ari's, I have this article up. Ari, a Mother Jones reporter, lists 10 ways in which what Levin, you and I have discussed is how Donald Trump and MAGA will rig the elections through electoral reform, right? It's a terrifying but on point conversation. Ari's piece is great. He uses all the facts. They're going to cheat. He's not going to leave. They will use any illegal, violent means necessary to stay in power, folks. But Lev, he's saying, well, maybe Republican leaders will do the right thing. I don't have faith in Republican leaders, but what I told them is the way you can siphon off maybe 10% of MAGA. And I think Steve Bannon also was worried about this because he said we might lose 10% due to the Epstein files. I think the Epstein files is how you weaken Donald Trump and siphon off at least 10%, but you also siphon off all the independents and all the people who are like, holy shit, this is a pro-pedophile movement. Lev.
Well, I'm gonna say something to you that two things. First of all, that from my sources in Congress, and I'm gonna have Congressman Rokana on next week to
Oh,
talk
good. You
about.
got him. Great.
Yeah, Roque, he's great. They're going to get the 218 votes, and it's going to become a standstill between Trump, because it's going to be up to Trump to push it through and allow it to go to the floor. So it's going to get interesting. And what I'm hearing is we're going to get the 218 votes.
For the discharge petition. This is what you're talking about, the discharge petition, right?
The discharge petition to get to the floor. Yeah, they're not mentioning the names because they don't want Trump to go after him. But there's 2 seats that I'm hearing that we're going to get the 218. That's the good news. The bad news that and I hate to be the bearer of the bad news, what's it called? But to response to you or what Trump thinks about MAGA, he understands that he blew MAGA up. He understands he does not have the same loyal support. He understands the divisions are the same. And something interesting happened that as I was reporting, I mean, you were talking about Waj, we broke also on the left hook, is about Dan Bongino. When he realized that Dan Bongino, they were not getting him on track, and then they had to go out, get the attorney general from Missouri, get him and work on that. Even till this day, that was the same timing when all the preparation began, because what we see in Venezuela, off the coast of Venezuela,
Oh, yeah.
is what I'm hearing very seriously from some really reliable sources, that is being preparation, that when all else fails, that will be announcement of war, and that's when you will forget about Epstein files, you're going to forget about the economy, you're going to forget about everything, because you're going to be worried about your boys and girls, troops on the ground. Right, I'm hearing from my sources in Venezuela that Maduro right now is in constant talks between Russia, China, and there's other groups like Wagner already in there. They're mobilizing over 1 million militia from all over Central America, the anti-Trump militia it's called, because there's other countries that know they're next that are lining up. So this is not a good thing, and that what I'm hearing from my sources. But this is something where it's beyond, instead of doing martial law, because he's realizing that there's major pushback right now with the Epstein, and he doesn't have the same support with MAGA, doesn't have the same support with the media, doesn't have the same support with his inner group supporters. That's why you're seeing these troops outside of, and such a heavy force outside of Venezuela.
That's a big scoop there, Lev, that insiders are telling you that he's prepping war for Venezuela. And folks who think that's outlandish, I just want to remind, just connect the dots. On Friday, they announced that the Department of Defense is now the Department of War. Donald Trump said that he has authority to declare this group a terrorist group. They bombed and killed 11 people on a boat without providing any evidence. The names of the victims have now been released. It was in international waters. Venezuela flew some planes. It's a massive saber rattling. J.D. Vance, puffed up his chest, and I think it was Brian Krasenstein who said that was a war crime, and he said, I don't give a shit. And furthermore, Stephen Miller has said that these folks in Venezuela and El Salvador are bringing drugs. He has used the word invasion. He has the word insurrection. We have the National Guard already in D.C. We're going to have them unleashed in Chicago. We have them already in L.A. And what I have said for a year. And I've said this to Lev multiple times, is my fear is if he gets desperate, thanks to Epstein and the economy, he will declare martial law. And I don't think people are still getting their heads out of the sand and opening their eyes. Zev, your response to what you just heard.
Well, I think it's interesting about the discharge petition. And I think it's going to be, that's true. I think that they are close to getting a majority of that. It doesn't mean they'll get to the vote, but I also agree with you that Venezuela is a real issue. Yesterday, Pete Hegseth was in Puerto Rico negotiating with the local officials there about using that as a potential base for operations for the Air Force and other vessels. It looks like there will be some sort of confrontation with Venezuela coming. Now, it's unclear to me how that really lines up. I mean, Maduro is very close to Russia. He's very close to China. So is Donald Trump. So how that squares away, whether this is just one of these performative kind of wars that Putin likes to throw on every once in a while. He likes to show the nation that he's having a war, even though he controls both sides. Maybe that's what they're trying to stage here, a little bit like that Iran invasion. But nevertheless, this will be the thing that they will try and do, very Kremlin-like, to sort of take over the headlines, divert attention, give Americans the kind of pump up that they like to get when they go to war, and ultimately, find ourselves in a situation where we're in some sort of confrontation there that wipes everyone's attention away from Epstein and all these other negative factors onto the invasion of Venezuela, or who knows, maybe it's part of Mexico too that they'll invade.
Well, he's getting desperate, right? I don't know if you saw Botox Caroline Levitt today. She didn't lead about the terrible economy. She didn't talk about Israel's plans in Gaza. She didn't talk about the Epstein files or the book. She came out and she said a Ukrainian refugee was stabbed in North Carolina by an immigrant. And then you sit there and go, well, why are there refugees? Oh, yeah, because Russia invaded Ukraine. What is Donald Trump doing to help Ukrainians? Oh, yeah, nothing, because he laid out the red carpet for Putin. And oh, yeah, if he's so tough on crime, and if this is North Carolina, how come he's not sending the National Guard to North Carolina? And if he actually is the tough on crime president, how come he actually moved Ghislaine Maxwell to a minimum security prison? And how come, that Israeli cybersecurity official last month got arrested in a sting operation where an FBI agent posed as a 15-year-old and lured those 8 men, 7 got arrested, and this Israeli cybersecurity pedophile was able to flee, folks, to Israel. And the person who did it is a U.S. acting attorney put there in Nevada by Donald Trump. So I think this is a sign of desperation and also a sign of power grab. And Lev, to me, it seems like the 4-year plan that they thought they had with Project 2025, they have to accelerate it because he's old. I don't think he's healthy. I think they realize the polls are going after him. I don't think they realize this Epstein thing would be such a big thing. So he's now openly saying, find me 100 seats. I want 100 seats. I'm going after mail-in voting. Venezuela, Department of War. I think he's throwing all of it at the kitchen sink. And the end result is not just chaos, but is authoritarianism. It's a distraction and the distraction towards the end goal. But your take on this, Lev, you have the sources.
No, you're 100% right, Waj. I mean, the way you're breaking it down, I couldn't say it better myself. The interesting part is, I was somebody that always used to say, because I was so close to Trump in around the 2016-15 time, and when people used to talk about compromat. What does Russia have on Donald Trump? They have the P tape. I used to always laugh about it because I knew there was no really P tape. I actually knew because my ex-partner was in the room in the Ritz-Carlton after the event. I knew everything about it. So I knew the Democrats were on the wrong team, but that didn't mean that there was no compromat. So I kept always thinking to myself in the past, literally a few weeks after watching Donald Trump's reaction to certain stuff, and also having some of my sources tell me that he was really pissed off at Putin, but not doing anything about it. I started realizing that this is more than just money, power, deals that they're making beyond, because Donald Trump, knowing him the way I know him, he's also very reactionary. He's very emotional. He's very reactionary. And, but the one person he does never reacts no matter what Putin does. He doesn't do it. He doesn't, there's no reactionary like aggression. Even right now, yesterday, he was threatening with, again, secondary tariffs. They were saying, breaking news, news. He's coming out. He's going to do something because of over the weekend, it was one of the most massive, over 800 drone attacks. And then today you have over 20 people killed. Again, quiet, nothing going on, just quiet. So that made me think, and I started going back to a lot of my really deep sources overseas in Eastern Europe, and I've been digging, and I'm working on a major story about some of the definite compromat that they have on him over the years. And this is probably, and Zev will attest to it, because a lot of what Zev's conversations and a lot of Zev's reporting led me to this, going down this path also. This is going to be probably one of the biggest KGB operations in the history of the world. Once it's uncovered, once the true story comes out, that how long, how many years, we're talking about over 30, maybe 40 years of actually working him as and then getting lucky enough for him to get into the White House, not once, but twice. I mean, it's a story that you couldn't make up.
Yeah,
Guys,
that's the stuff I've been.
go
Sorry.
ahead.
No,
No,
it's
no,
stuff
go
I've been
ahead.
writing about in The Greatest Heist, which has been to look at not just the human trafficking crimes or these other crimes around the women, but around the financial crimes that these guys have been doing for the last 40 years, based on the KGB operation, as Lev points out. These certainly Epstein is tied to the KGB in various ways, but so is Donald Trump, all the way back from 1987. To today. I mean, there are links linking him all the way through that. And then there's all these clues that we've uncovered during our investigation, The Greatest Heights. The fact that they both happened to join Deutsche Bank on the private wealth on exactly the same day in the same division. They both, when Trump was finished his bankruptcy period in the 1990s, he came back in 1996 with $450 million. That money, I believe, came directly from the Russians, that they basically funneled that to him. Coincidentally, Jeffrey Epstein had just stolen $450 million from Towers Financial. Was it the same $450 million? Why $450 million? There's lots of explanations around that. Both Trump and Epstein were at JP Morgan from 2000 to 2013. That's another sort of misconnection, but we've heard a lot about JP Morgan in the last few days with that New York Times article and other revelations around how JP Morgan just ignored the human trafficking, ignored all the billions of dollars passing between Jeffrey Epstein and these other associates over the years. And then there's this new evidence, which we're now revealing in the next few days, which is these financial crashes like the SNL savings and loans crash, the 1987 Black Monday, all the way to the 2008 collapse, which involved the subprime loans and Obama and all that. All of that seems to follow the same pattern of extracting money from these institutions, collapsing the market, and then stealing the bailout money, positioning them to be there to stealing the bailout money, all of which is extracted, by as much as maybe some people say $70 trillion out of the American economy between the 80s and 2008. This is a huge financial criminal syndicate that has been operating in the United States, not just the human trafficking piece of it. That's the piece that they use to blackmail people to keep their secrets. The rest is this massive financial criminal operation that's been going on for decades.
And that's what Zev is 100. I'm sorry to interrupt, Waj, but Zev is 100% right, because a lot of people, because of the disgusting part of the human trafficking and the child pedophilia and everything, that's why the main concentration on it, and that's why they were able to get away with it. But that was not their setting up. They didn't set up their corporation to do that. That was their that was their lifestyle. That was their own perversion. That was their way of attracting other people, using it as blackmail and all kinds of things. But what their purpose of their crime was financial power and stealing all of this money. And this was that other part of the world. It was the world that they all kind of, coincided in. And then Jeffrey Epstein was the leader that allowed them to be themselves, kind of. And that's what you heard, from like Katie Johnson when she described those disgusting parties where, not only that, where she met Donald Trump and other men were sitting there and had these 14, 15, 13-year-old girls walk around, service them. So it was, it's like Jeffrey Epstein throwing the party, inviting all of them, and all of them coming and sitting there and participating,
It's clear that Donald Trump is thoroughly compromised. We don't know why. because he has been Putin's poodle for 10 years. He laid out the red carpet, and after he laid out the red carpet after Putin's visit, he's done everything in his power to help Putin and harm our allies, including removing the security clearance of 37 intelligence officers who were working primarily on Russian interference and, limiting aid to Europe and promoting Russia's talking points and putting conditions only on Zelensky but not on Putin. It's clear. What we don't know is what the compromat is. And Senator Wyden, the Democrat, has talked about following the money trail, and following the money trail will expose not just Donald Trump, but Jeffrey Epstein and also the cabal of just terrible men. And I believe, and I think Zev and Lev agree, that Democrats have to keep the focus on Epstein, not just for justice for these hundreds of girls who were raped, but also because this is the one thing that is bipartisan in America. Over 80% of independents, Democrats, and Republicans want the release of the files. And there's no reason, as Zev said, why the Department of Justice can't release it. A federal judge says you can release it. You don't need these grand jury testimony that will, name these victims who I want to protect. You can release the files. This is it, folks. The Epstein files is his major weakness. And especially as he's going towards authoritarianism, if this can cause some fissures, if this can weaken Republicans, if this can turn some people against him, it's well worth it. Zev and Lev, thank you so much for your time. Zev, you first. Shamelessly promote yourself.
Well, everyone can check out my stuff at narrative.org, NARATIV.org. It's spelled a little weird, but check out what I do there. And The Greatest Heist is the series we have there. I'm premiering chapter 10 this week, which will go into the whole SNL crisis and how they try to do that. But basically, it's the work of Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein in pulling off the biggest crime in history. And we're going through that chapter by chapter in a real-time basis. So that's at narrative.org.
Lev.
Yeah, hey, Substack community, you know my whole spiel. I just want everybody to make sure that we all stick together, join forces, subscribe to all of the following people, Waj, Zev, independent journalists out there. They're bringing you the real news because in media is not there. Everything, just think about everything we're talking about right now. And if you go put on any television station out there, none of them are bringing you the inside story. None of them are giving you the actual facts. None of them are telling you what's happening. They're all running around, as they say, chasing that story, that clickbait. But with that said, we appreciate all of you. Continue doing the work. Be our megaphone. Be an extension of our voice. Spread the message. And if you can, be a paid subscriber, because what we are doing here, it's full time. We're trying out there. Waj has like 30 kids. I have 7 kids. Zev has, I don't know how many
0 kids.
Waj has 30.
That's why he looks so young.
That's probably the case.
Zev, that's why Zev has muscles and looks young, because he has 0 kids. Me and Lev have like 30 each.
That's the price you pay for having great kids.
Folks, yeah, but it's good. It's a good chaos. But folks, please become a subscriber. I have no paywall in the left hook. At the very least, become a free subscriber. There's 1,800 people watching. This will be up for the people who joined us late. Some fantastic information and scoops by Lev and Zev, and why the Epstein scandal is not a hoax, but actually one of the biggest deals. And it is actually a cover-up by the Trump administration, and why Democrats, investigative journalists, need to be on it and expose the people and the money trail, because that's how you expose and weaken Donald Trump as he marches towards authoritarianism. Folks, we're going to have this up on all of our Substacks in about 30 minutes with transcripts. If you missed any of it, don't worry, it'll be out there. Be kind, be decent, stay informed, and please, oh please, don't be a fascist. Take care, guys.
Cheers, Waj. Thank you so much.